process. And you should, that's, democracy at its best.
It's called Alexander, it's Middletown.
I know they have no, we're talking about pulling up all the tracks there, but, that's an issue with them. Yes, Barbara?
You're talking about a transloading station, transloading garbage. Not garbage, goods. Now, if, say for instance, Mr. Teresi was on the line that wants pellets or whatever he wants brought in, you can unload at that spot. Now, is that a transloading spot or a transloading facility?
Well, and that it's a very good point. And that was exactly the big, one of the stumbling blocks with Middletown was that, the only thing we can do is transload. We're not shipping cars.
I understand that. That's what railroads are about.
Right.
But I think to take my question a little further is then, I can understand you transloading off materials to Mr. Teresi and anyone else along the line. But say, for instance, you decided that you want to build a transloading station now where you might have to buy land. Would that come to a planning board in the town, or could you do that without local approval?
To be fair with the city of Middletown, and this is something that was we hammered out, was that we looked at the history of the railroad, and for 140 years of history, it did very well as a little railroad and served this community well. And I look back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and they did about 3,000 cars a year. And we said, oh, what does that really equate to? It's 15 cars, 15 cars a day. And that was what we put in the agreement. We said, under the way we currently operate, and the way we operated in the past, we did 15 carloads a day. It was fertilizer, it was this and whatnot. Let's preserve that. Let us preserve that, because realistically, I don't think I'll even get close to that. But at least as a railroad, that allows us to be able to act as a railroad, supply someone like Mr. Teresi, or Gary Tetz, or somebody who's looking to get a commodity, and we don't have to go through a process where the process could have conflicting interests. If somebody's on the board who has a trucking company that supplies the sand, it might not go so well, and that is why the preemption exists. It's that if we had to get a permit to ship a commodity through every single town, everybody would put up a toll booth just like Middletown did. And everybody would try and stop the process. And it's a very warranted way of managing the rail system, and it's part of a bigger network. So, but yes, to cover that, because they had the same concern. They said, we don't want you to put up some big monstrosity. And we said, let us operate like we did. We never impacted anybody. We did 15 cars a day. The community benefited, and let's just allow us to preserve that as a short line. We'll probably never get to that. We haven't been there in 20 years. But you know what? With the growing population, with fuel going up, commodities like salt could come through us. That's reasonable. Lumber's already coming on the rail. There's a bunch of little commodities that could add up to something reasonable. And yes, we would have the ability to do that without going through. But if we're any bigger than that, we agreed with Middletown that we would come before the board.
And to go back to the trash that Mr. Witt just said, is that I believe I picked up this booklet when you had your open house.
Okay,
And,
that was September.
I think you sent me one, I asked for one.
Right.
And you have 4 phases. The last phase goes only to Slate Hill, which means it's not even going through Minnesink. You have, like you just stated, you will be pulling up the lines maybe in Minnesink and making it a walking trail. So there couldn't be a transfer station of garbage or anything put down there and come up through us. And most of the anything that's going out is going out the other end of Middletown.
Yeah, it's going to have to go.
So even if Masada did end up, it wouldn't come through our town.
No, it would go north.
It would go north, right?
Yeah.
So that would be Middletown's problem, not ours. Thank you.
Maybe.
Well,
Yeah.
it's got nowhere to go the other way because it can't go out.
One thing, because we felt there was really not much of a possibility of waste happening, and we got ourselves in trouble with the INS a little bit, but we agreed to ship anything out within 24 hours. That was something they wanted to see, and it was probably something that we just don't feel like waste makes any sense. It really doesn't. And part of the reason for that is that the main line is 263,000 pound capacity line. And that's undersized. And when you look at the 20,000 or so tons that gets transferred per day of waste that gets transported by Waste Management, Allied Waste, or some of these other bigger companies, it all happens in high capacity cars, 286 cars, the higher capacity. And you can't do that here. So just from an economic standpoint, it never made sense. So we put a lot of things in there that were a little bit of a risk for us, but we never really thought it was going to matter, because I don't think it's going to matter.
Okay.
Yes, Dan?
Well, if I understand what's been said and what David's comment was, the railroad is not going to initiate anything. They're willing to give up their right to create a planning board and that type of stuff. However, if I owned property next to the railroad and I wanted to build a nuclear waste reprocessing facility, they would be required to deal with it.
One caveat there. You're assuming you got planning board